Cyberpunk 2077 just got another 17GB or so update. This is going to be hotfix 1.05 for the game, and this is actually a particularly important one because based off their recent call with investors, it very much so is implied or almost confirmed that this is the last update of 2020. Now, of course, this is before some of the recent backlash from being pulled from the Sony store, so that could change things, but as of right now, I wouldn't be shocked if this is all we have for the rest of the year. And their current plan is to have a larger or meatier update in both January and February. As far as the update stands right now, I waited about 20 hours before making this video, but for one reason or another, it is still not yet shipped out on PC, so I did most of the testing with this update on my own Xbox One X. It's not totally clear why this PC update is taking a bit longer. We'll talk about some of the expected changes that could be pretty impactful for some of you, but taking a note out of Bethesda's book, there also are some fairly glaring problems with this update and introduced bugs from it. Otherwise, as far as this update overall does go, right off the bat, similar to the last one, it fixes several progress blocking problems, so being unable to progress certain quests, and there's a huge list of quests that got addressed around this. Sometimes just being a bug fix, but for many of these being things that didn't allow you to actually continue the quest. Some of the ones you may find positive as a result of this, Pan Am should be calling you more often before the I'll Fly Away quest, because of course what Cyberpunk needs is more people to be calling us, but hey, at least it's Pan Am. Even further, they fixed that funny issue with Delamain's image actually displaying over top whoever was calling you. This is a weird one where you would get a phone call, but Delamain would pop up even though it wasn't necessarily Delamain. They fixed the funny bug that after completing the prologue and having that montage, you would be nude in your apartment, which technically in this game, you're never supposed to be nude in the world, only in inventory screens and way of making your character. Some issues for console specifically that are live right now. It actually made it so the image overall with chromatic aberration and film grain ARN is sharper. It's not a huge change, but the game definitely looks a bit better as a result of this. So if you did turn off these settings before, which was a common day one fix, you might want to test them and turn them back on to see how much better the game looks or doesn't look. One of the pretty nice ones that was added is it seems like they may have fixed HDR somewhat. There were reports in the past that HDR on this game was kind of just broken. It was not working properly and didn't seem to be true HDR, but that seems to have been fixed somewhat. There's some videos online of people testing this. Unfortunately, I don't have an HDR screen or TV, so I can't test it. But early results are definitely promising. It seems like HDR at the very least is functioning properly and probably looks quite a bit better now. NPCs got a bit smarter. Now NPCs will actually go into cover faster after a fight does begin. CDPR mentioned in the past that they consider certain AI issues a bug, so this could be one example of that. Now let's hope that the cops magically teleporting behind you is also a bug that will get fixed at some point. Another nice quality of life fix, they made it so it now takes more shots to take out a civilian NPC while in combat. So let's say you're just fighting someone or fighting the cops and there's a civilian NPC in the background that you accidentally hit. It's going to take a bit more to actually take them down now. I have another minor gameplay one, but a hilarious one nonetheless. Off-screen explosions now do make noise. There are a couple of huge PC fixes. There's this AVX crash problem with some people that had a specific type of processor. If you actually look at the mods for Cyberpunk, one of the most popular mods was fixing this AVX crash, and there's actually a ton of mods doing that. So thankfully, it looks like CD Projekt just fixed that now. They mentioned optimizing the default core and thread utilization for 4-core and 6-core AMD Ryzen processors. There's been a lot of oddities or weirdness with performance on PC. Some people just having significantly lowered performance to what their system should be able to do, or even surprisingly low utilization overall for your GPU or processor. So hopefully this fixes that for some people. It seems like there may have been an underutilization by processors or not using all the cores on a processor for these specific ones. It seems like this wasn't a problem for 8-core, 12-core, and 16-core, so that's why it's not applied to them. And they even mentioned here they tested this in cooperation with AMD, so hopefully it does mean this does have some nice results. They removed the debug console, which is kind of a weird one. The way to enable this was actually through some INI edits or using a mod. They mentioned that it was leading to crashes or blocked quests, which doesn't really seem like a huge issue. I mean, a lot of times on PC, you kind of cheat your way out of the world or data mine the files to find out future content. They do explicitly say here, this doesn't mean we don't want to support the modding community. Stay tuned for more info on that, but still is a weird one. With all the other problems going on with the game, removing the debug console, which is a pretty handy tool for a lot of people, you could spawn in items, feels like something they didn't need to do here. Especially if you cause your game to crash after messing around with console commands, that's not really a huge issue. Another pretty hilarious one that if you know the context, you'll probably get a good laugh out of. They removed the memory pool budget CSV file. This was not connected with the final version of the game and had no influence on it. It was a leftover file used during development to estimate memory usage. It had no effect on how much memory was actually allocated. So there was this huge Reddit thread with this user kind of calling out CD Projekt Red, saying they shipped the wrong config file and that how changing this led to quite significant performance gains at some points. But if CDPR is to be believed here, which I kind of think that's real, he was just totally wrong. Funny enough, many people reported doing this, restarting their game and having performance increases. Either there's a third variable there that is actually increasing performance, like a memory leak, then restarting the game will correct for that, but then it would still decrease your performance over time. So either way, it's just kind of funny to go back and read that thread of all these people claiming huge gains by changing values in this file that apparently does nothing. And even the person to find that fix accepting donations and now asking for a dev from CDPR to contact him about the most recent change. And then finally, there was just that blanket statement of multiple stability improvements, including crash fixes, which we'll talk about that in a moment. But unfortunately with this, there was also some unforeseen consequences, at least for those on PlayStation, as there seems to be two more major issues to pop up with this update on PlayStation. It seems like for a ton of people, and perhaps it's just everyone, after this update, if you going into the settings menu on consoles, at least for right now, will lock you there. It seems like it's most often happening on PlayStation, but there's some reports on Xbox also. And basically, if you're in the game and you open the settings menu to tweak or change a setting, you can't get back into the game. You're trapped there and have to close the game altogether. Some people have been having success with changing settings at the main menu of the game first, then when you actually load a save, don't go into the settings menu or you will be potentially trapped. But even further, for one reason or another, there have been way more reports of crashing on PlayStation, PS5 in particular. Many people are reporting that they are just crashing more frequently or even within a half hour of playing the game after getting this update. I don't have a PlayStation, I can't test this, but there are numerous reports of this. In several hours of testing on Xbox, I didn't really notice much in the way of stability improvements. The game still had huge FPS drops. It wasn't like this now was running smoothly. Sprinting or driving in Night City led to massive frame drops, getting 20 if not lower FPS, so that's not resolved. Although fortunately I didn't have any crashing issues, so it definitely seems like some of that crashing that may have been present previously has been removed, at least on the Xbox side. It's not clear what's going on with PlayStation right now. I've seen some reports saying that on the base PS4 the FPS is dropping less slow. So if before it was dropping to 15 FPS, perhaps now it's dropping down to 20, so it's staying a bit more stable in general, but it's not reflective based off what I'm experiencing on my Xbox One X at the very least. And even further, I'm getting some bugs here and there, just for example, my character being invisible. Overall with this update, it's another nice kind of step in the right direction, kind of. They definitely are doing a good job at preventing some of those quest-related issues, but it obviously isn't addressing the big elephant in the room with those huge FPS problems. Although this was to be expected. CDPR themselves said that that wasn't something they were going to be addressing here, but more so in 2021 with the January and February update. But this means that a lot of people are probably getting this game for the holiday, probably for Christmas specifically, and unless there's some surprise update that manages to fix everything before then, they're gonna have a lot of these FPS problems, which makes the game, at least in my opinion, unplayable. Like with the footage you're seeing in the background, I can't play the game like this. I just couldn't get through it at this low of an FPS consistently. Another interesting piece of news to pop up recently is that apparently Cyberpunk has a issue or a fundamental flaw where if your save game goes over 8 megabytes in size, it'll actually corrupt itself, or really the save game becomes corrupted as that's one of its limits. Now it seems like for the vast majority of people you'll be totally okay, but if you are doing a ton of crafting, this is something that will increase your save size. So if you're speccing into crafting specifically, I guess just be wary or make multiple saves because one may end up getting corrupted. This has the potential to be a pretty big issue, but of course it might be one of those things that gets talked about a lot but doesn't actually end up affecting a lot of players because most people probably won't go down the crafting route that much. I mean, most people just aren't going down the crafting route already, but either way, do be wary of this. It only really came to light in the past 12 to 24 hours, so we'll see how the story does evolve in the next couple of days. But yeah, with that said, that is Cyberpunk 2077's most recent update. I have a suspicion Sony got a preview of this update and that's why the game was pulled from their store, and of course refunds were offered. They realized that it wasn't just going to be working 2 updates later and would have a 2-month or so timeline before the game is in a more functional position on base PS4, even assuming that timeline is met in the future. Either way though, I thank you all again for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope to see you all later.